Good morning. Say hello, church. I hope all is well in your world, and I hope that you're doing well, and I hope that you're surviving, and I hope you're getting by in these crazy, unique times that we're living in right now. It's like on a personal note, on a personal level, my heart is really longing for the day when we all get to get back together face to face. We all get to gather up in the chapel, and it's like we all get to see each other face to face, and it's like not over the screen of a computer or of a phone, but it's like until then, this is what we have. We're stuck doing it. So like in the meantime, we're gonna make the best of it. We're gonna make the most of it. That's like we're going to still join together, and it's like we're still gonna get to worship together. And it's like also, before I get too carried away this morning, that's like I just want to remind you, that's like take the time or to hit the share button. Please feel free to share this video. Click on the like button if you're watching this. That's like leave a comment, because I would love to read your comments. So like let me know that I'm not just talking to a cell phone by myself down here in my basement. So like click the like button, leave a comment, and it's like let us know what's going on in your life. It's like this morning, as Pastor Robert, he shared last week, we're going to be starting a new series this morning. That's like I want to start this morning by like asking a question that I want to ask, a big question. And it's a question that all of us have faced from time to time. All of us have faced this at one point or another in our lives. And it's like maybe even you're sitting at home this morning, and it's like you find yourself asking this question. You find yourself asking yourself this question every day in these kind of crazy times we're living in. It's like the question is, it's like the big question we want to talk about this morning is, what do you do, what do we do when it's all the plans that we have made, all the plans that you have made don't seem to be working out? What do you do when the resources that you have, all the resources that you have built up, they have suddenly ran out? What do you do when life throws you a curveball? That's like when all the answers we know only leave us asking more questions. So the big question is, what do you do? What do we do when life just doesn't seem to be working out? It's like we're starting a new series this morning, like I mentioned, called Chasing the Sun. And it's like that sun as an S-O-N, not S-U-N, like that orange ball of fire outside in the sky. But we're going to be going through a series that's called Chasing the Sun, S-O-N. It's like in this series, the whole point of this series is we are going to be going through the 7 miracles of Jesus that are mentioned in the book of John. Now, John was a disciple of Jesus, so John would have had a first-hand eyewitness account to these miracles. But it's like what I find interesting is, out of the hundreds and maybe even of the thousands of the miracles that like Jesus performed, we see that John only records 7 of them in his book. So then that leaves me thinking that somehow these 7 must have had some kind of significance with John. These must have had some type of relevance with the Apostle John. And it's like also, John doesn't even call these miracles. John calls these signs. John says these are the signs of Jesus. So then we ask ourselves, why does he use the word signs? What are these signs of? What are these signs about? That's like, so if you're following along with your Bibles, I will give you a second, but we're going to be reading in John chapter 2, and it's the story of when Jesus turns the water into wine. John chapter 2, and it's going to be verses 1 through 12. John chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. And this is the Apostle John's eyewitness account of this miracle or this sign. John chapter 2, verses 1 through 12 says that on the 3rd day, it says that a wedding took place in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding as well. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, "They don't have any wine." "What has this concern of yours to do with me, woman?" Jesus asked. "My hour has not yet come." I'll just stop for a brief second because that verse can almost sound like Jesus is being harsh with his mother, but in reality, he is not. We have to understand this is a different time, and it's like they used words a little bit different than ours. What a better translation of this verse would be saying is, Jesus is pretty much saying, Mom, what do you want me to do? Mother, what do you want me to do? It's not time for me to reveal myself yet, but it's nonetheless, Jesus go ahead and does because it is his mom asking him. So this isn't Jesus scolding his mom. It's just him saying, Mom, what do you want me to do about this? Let's pick back up in verse 5. Verse 5 says, "Do whatever he tells you," his mother told the servants. Now, there were 6 stone water jars that had been set there for the Jewish purification. Each contained about 20 to 30 gallons. Fill the jars with water, Jesus told them. So they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief servant." And they did. When the chief servant tasted the water after it had become wine, he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. He called the groom and told him, "Everybody sets out the finest wine first. Then after they have drunk freely, the inferior. But you have kept the fine wine until now." Jesus performed his first sign. There's that word sign. Jesus performed this first sign in Cana of Galilee. He displayed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum together with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they stayed there for only a few days. Now, to kind of set the scene here, there is a huge event that is going on in town. There is a wedding. There's a huge wedding that has taken place, and it's Jesus' family. Jesus and his disciples were all invited to this big wedding. And it's during this event or during this wedding, there's a problem arises. This problem comes up, and the problem is they run out of wine. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but this was a big deal in this time of history. See, because wine in the first century was a staple drink. Because you have to remember, back in the first century AD, they didn't have canned soda. They didn't have sweet tea. They didn't have bottled purified water. So they made and they drank wine. Now this was a diluted wine, but they made and they drank wine because it kept for a long time. And it's like, plus, after all, this is a celebration. This is a wedding. And what do you have at celebrations, and what do a lot of weddings even today have? They have wine, they have champagne. It's a big party. It's a big deal. But at this wedding, at this party, they run out of wine. This big problem rises. And it's like no wine at this party would have meant that the party was over. And if the party was over, suddenly that means that everybody would have went home unhappy. But luckily, Jesus was there that day. And with some spurning home from his mom, Jesus decided to turn some regular water that was set in jars that day into the finest wine that they have ever had. And it's like the party went on into the end of the night. And it's like the story doesn't say, but we can ad-lib this and say that the bride and the groom lived happily ever after. The end. It sounds like a Disney movie. So then, after reading this, we have to look at this story and we have to ask ourselves, why is this story important? Why is this important to us today? How is this story important to us today? Why did the Apostle John, this disciple of Jesus, choose to add this particular miracle? This miracle, he turned water into wine at a wedding. So why add this story? What made this story so special? Well, there's actually two reasons why. There is a big heavenly reason. There's the big spiritual reason why he done this. But then there is also the earthly, everyday, day-to-day reason that you and me can take home into our own lives. Reason why. Well, it's like the first big reason, the big spiritual reason why he done this was so that the people and his disciples would believe in him. We see that in John chapter 2, verse 11. John chapter 2, verse 11 says, because of what he did on that day, it says that his glory was revealed and his disciples believed in him. Jesus didn't just turn the water into wine for the convenience of the party. He didn't become an outlaw bootleg moonshiner that day just to get some people drunk or to make wine or just for some unknown reason. Jesus had a reason for what he done that day. He had a specific, particular reason why he done this. And because, see, Jesus doesn't do anything by chance. There are no coincidences with God. There's always a bigger heavenly purpose to everything that he done while he was on this earth. It's like the big reason why he done this was so that he could reveal his glory. It's like when Christ reveals his glory, that results in people coming to him. That opens up the door to people coming to him and people believing in him. That's why John calls this miracle a sign, because this is a sign of Christ's true glory. This was the first miracle or the first sign of Jesus. This was his coming out party, which happened to be at a party. So this is the big reason Jesus done this day to reveal himself to the world so that people would believe in him and that they could come to him. So that's the big spiritual church reason why he turned the water into wine. So now for the everyday earthly reason, now for the reason that you and me can take home today or that we can carry over to our everyday life. So the everyday earthly reason for this miracle or this sign was to simply bring people joy that day. This was to bring the party joy. Because see, remember, we just talked about it, how wine was a staple at that time. Wine was a big deal. And it's like, wine was a picture of celebration. Because if that people were drinking wine, there was something big going on. There was a celebration going on. Wine was a picture of joy. It was a symbol of joy to these people. And it's like the people that day ran out of wine. Or as you can say, they ran out of celebration. They ran out of joy that day. It's like the celebration that they had suddenly turned into disappointment. All of the best, well-made plans that day, all the plans of the wedding coordinator and the guests that day, all the well-placed plans got turned upside down, and their celebration, their joy, turned into uncertainty, and it turned into disappointment. It kind of sounds like some of our lives this morning, doesn't it? Maybe even that sounds like your life this morning. Maybe something is going on in your life where you have made all the greatest, you have sat down and figured out step 1 through step 20, and then it just gets turned upside down, and you're living in a world of chaos and a world of uncertainty right now. So have you lost your joy this morning? Has your celebration turned into disappointment? Let's face it, let's be truthful. We all face these times we all face this from time to time. We all have to deal with this at one point or another in our lives. We all make plans and they fail. We all hold celebrations that end up turning into disappointments. It's just kind of how things go sometimes. We live on a broken earth that because of sin, this earth is cursed, and so it's like unfortunately we catch the brunt of it sometimes. But it's thankfully, and here's the awesome thing to take home this morning is Jesus was there. Jesus shows up on the scene that day, and Jesus brings a temporary joy through some wine. He made wine that day. He created a temporary joy that ultimately led to realizing the true eternal joy that only comes through believing and following Jesus Christ. He made wine that day. That's all he did. He made a temporary joy to reveal the true everlasting joy that only comes through following him. Folks, church, Jesus wants to fill the lives of those who believe in him with a well of everlasting joy. And so here's the awesome thing. The closer we get to him, the more we seek him, the more we chase after the S-O-N, Son, the more joy we get to live in. I can contest to this. I can give you evidence on this, that the more we chase after Jesus, the more we chase after the Son, the more joy we will have. Even in times of disappointment, we can have joy. And this same Jesus, the same Jesus that turned water into wine that day, the same Jesus that turned disappointment into celebration, that turned a disaster at this wedding into a celebration, he wants to do the same for you. He wants to do the same in your life. And he can and will do the same for you if you only chase after him, if you chase after the Son, Jesus Christ. And it's like if you're sitting at home today and you're watching this video, and if you need a miracle, stop trying to fill your life with the cheap temporary wine of this world. Stop chasing after the luxuries of this world or the get-rich-quick schemes of this world. Stop trying to chase after the temporary fixes of this world, the cheap wine of this world, because these things were never truly meant to satisfy you. These are only temporary. Trust me, it will run out. The cheap wine of this world will run out. We just read where it even ran out at this party. But it's like maybe it already has ran out in your life. Maybe you're running on empty. So like my challenge and my hope for you this morning is that instead of trying to fill yourself or refill yourself with this cheap temporary wine, fill yourself with Jesus Christ. Chase after him. Fill yourself with his water. Fill yourself with his wine. It is a well that is everlasting. It never ends. So chase after him. Chase after the Son this morning. And say, because with Jesus, as a follower of Jesus, even when life seems to be falling apart, even when life seems to be uncertain, even when our celebration turns into a disaster, we can trust, we can hope in the fact that God is still good, and God is always working to take and transform all of our failures and all of our disappointments and turn them into joy. We don't always know how it's going to work out, but God is always working to turn our disappointments, our disasters, our failures, he's working to somehow turn them into joy. Somehow he's going to make something good out of it. Jesus can and will turn your disappointments into celebrations. And it's like people that if you don't know Jesus today, please do it today. Reach out to him. Chase after the Son. It's like if you need help doing that, you can please reach out. You can leave me a message and say, I would love to get back with you. I would love to lead you through getting to know Jesus better and how to better chase after the Son. want to say, church, I love you guys. It's like I miss y'all so much, and I cannot wait till we get to get back in person and say do this all over again. Goodbye.